And so we got about 20 minutes for Sal. And I would like for you to talk about the diet and how diet affects you, your spirituality.
I don't know that 20 minutes will do it, but I'll start.
Okay. You know the main part I wanted to get to, because I just noticed a lot of people think that being vegan is spiritual or pescatarian is spiritual, or all these different things, you know. But then I've also seen people get attacked. I've seen some people doing raw meat diet and they were being attacked. And I'm not sure any of that has anything to do with your spirituality. As long as you keep your gut health good, I don't know what, you know, are we going to hell now? Because I think we're putting labels on each other like, oh, you're going to hell, or you can't be psychic if you smoke a cigarette. You know, there's people who have gifts. It may not be the best, but
that's ego judging.
Tell me all about ego judging.
I think you're doing a good job. Okay, so diet. We have, for thousands of years, in fact, I will say for millions of years, we have eaten meat. We used to be, 500 years ago, we were herbivores. And that meant that we had 4 stomachs like a cow, like a gorilla. It was a totally different thing. But we've gradually changed for various reasons I'm not going to bother you with today. But today, our system is carnivore. Now, what I mean by carnivore is that we have to eat protein from outside. A cow, herbivores do not eat protein from outside. Herbivores create protein within their bodies through the breakdown of leaves and grass and bark. They break down the cellulose. They use bacteria to create the protein. So we don't have that facility. We have to ingest protein. So people have always eaten protein. They needed protein. They never had enough protein. Did you notice that usually someone owned all the land and nobody else was allowed to go poaching, because now all the meat here belongs to me? So American Indians, they had all the buffaloes before we came around, and we committed genocide pretty much on the buffalo. Meat is very essential for the human body.
It cut up a little bit.
It's designed to break down meat. It really. What was that?
It cut up. You said meat is very, and then it like sped up, slowed down.
So meat is really, meat is processed in the stomach. The stomach is a muscle specifically designed to break meat down. It generates acid. If you have food which is carbohydrate, sugary, it will give you indigestion. You'll get acid reflux. A lot of people complain of acid reflux. You get acid reflux because you're not giving the stomach what it needs, which is meat. So the stomach is designed specifically for meat. When that meat is broken down, it goes through into the esophagus, and in the first section, fat is broken down. So now you've got the bile from the gallbladder and the pancreatic juices, and between the two of them, they break the fat down into minuscule little particles, which will go through the lining of the intestines, and then it will go through the lymphatic system, and it will go into the liver and get spread through the wherever it needs to go. So we need meat and we need fat. If you don't eat fat, your gallbladder will give you gallstones. Okay, so we need fat and we need the pancreatic juice as well. So between the two of them, they do that.
You need it for your brain as well. Don't you need fat for your brain?
You need fat for the brain, but I haven't got there yet.
Okay.
So, so that fat, if you have too much fat, the pancreas and the gallbladder, the bile, they will not be sufficient, and so some of that fat will go out through your number two, the anus, the second, the colon, through the colon. So it doesn't matter if you have too much fat. You can only have as much fat as your body can actually process, in that sense. If you have roughage from cellulose, the stomach can't do anything with it. The small intestines can't really do anything with it. The colon most definitely cannot do anything with it. Now, you can develop some bacteria which can do a little bit of breakdown of cellulose, but not sufficient, not significant, not in any quantity that really matters. And so that roughage now goes out through the colon, but the colon is not designed for the roughage. In the herbivores, the colon ferments the roughage, and from that it develops fat and proteins. We don't have that. So our colon is a very thin muscle compared to an animal's colon. So it's a very thin tissue that goes all the way around, and it's very easy to overload it with too much roughage. And people have spastic colons and distorted colons, and it's all because they have too much roughage. And then when it comes to the other end, the roughage itself absorbs the water. So the roughage absorbs the water from the intestine, sorry, the other way around. The colon absorbs the water from the roughage. So you end up with very dry roughage. And if it doesn't go out 2 times a day or 3 times a day, depending on how much you eat, you're going to get constipated, and you can get seriously impacted if you don't have enough bowel movements in a day. So roughage can be problematic for human beings. And what do people have for their breakfast cereal? Roughage. They say you need roughage, right? You need roughage for the colon. Nonsense. You don't need roughage for the colon. The colon doesn't need roughage. The colon needs to be left alone. It's now a weak thing of what it used to be 500 million years ago. It doesn't need to do anything. What tends to happen is that people eat too many processed foods, they eat too many carbohydrates, and people eat too many foods which are poisonous. For example, for many people, milk, oranges, lemons, the body can't deal with that. So they get sinus congestion, and they have a lot of phlegm growing up, developing within the sinuses. And they think, oh, well, that's how it is, go through life with sinus congestion. But if it congests your sinuses, because the body experiences that as a poison, what happens when it gets to the other end, to the colon, to the large intestine, which is designed to absorb liquids, i.e. your pancreatic juices and your stomach acids, which may be left in there, it all gets reabsorbed. The ingredients get reabsorbed back into the body to be reused. So minerals get reabsorbed through the large intestine. But if you're now eating these poisons in this liquid form, your colon needs to protect itself from them. Otherwise, you won't survive. And in fact, through the generations, those who did not have the ability, the genetic ability to protect their colon have died because they've poisoned themselves. You eat something poisonous, your body says, poison, diarrhea, everything goes out, right? But if your colon doesn't have the ability to protect itself from these poisons running through, they will just get reabsorbed. So your colon, our colon, creates phlegm to protect itself. Now, if you keep eating foods which generate phlegm in you, your colon will get an increasingly more and more coated with dried phlegm. And eventually, people have problems with their colons because their diet is not what we're supposed to have. Now, we never had a problem with diet. Well, the only problem we ever had with diet was trying to get enough of what we needed. But about 150 years ago, we began to create things which were bad for us. And then these Quakers, they got this idea that meat inflamed the passions. Okay? And that's a definite no-no. So all these people with their egos and their judgmentalness, if you drink, if you eat this, it's bad for you, it'll stop your spirituality, you go to hell, all of that was going on. And gradually from that evolved the idea that being a vegetarian, vegan, somehow is good for the soul. It's complete and utter garbage. You're going to lose half the people that listen to you now. Complete and utter garbage.
I don't mind starting a fight.
For the very simple reason that our soul fragment comes into this world. Well, it doesn't come into the world, but it blends with our bodies to experience life. And that means experiencing life to the full in every aspect.
Yeah, thank you.
And that means that sometimes we're going to be good, sometimes we're going to be bad. But what we're doing is we're trying to learn how to manage and handle our egos so that our egos become our servant rather than our master.
Take a break.
And
yes, we're here to live life in the full.
And every animal on this earth comes here for the same reason.
Yes.
They're not at our level, they're at their level, but it's all the same thing. We're all here to experience life to the full. And the animals that feed us, their soul already knows that they're for the chop. Nothing happens by accident in this life. Everything is by design. We ourselves, we are machines in a clock-like universe, but there is free will at the spirit world, and they're the ones that call the tune. And before we're born on this earth, our path through life has already been mapped. Our interactions are mapped. And I share with you now that eating meat, if that is what our bodies need, then what we need to give them? Because we are carnivores. Our mechanism is carnivore. Now, I need to separate. We can have vegetables, we can have fruit. We can survive on that. Human bodies are amazing. We are an incredible machine. It doesn't matter if you lose 2 legs and an arm, you can still survive. It doesn't matter if 2 of your organs, internal organs, are not working very well. It doesn't matter if you got high blood pressure, you can still survive. You won't survive as long as others, but you can survive. The human body is extremely versatile and accommodating. However, if you want to be truly healthy, if you want to be a vehicle for your soul to express itself on this earth, then give your body what it needs. And what your body needs is protein and fat and nutrients. Yeah. And what it does not need, although it can cope with, is a bit of carbohydrate. It doesn't need seeds. It doesn't need sugar, but it can cope with a bit of it. There's a lot of things it doesn't need. You know, for optimum performance, it doesn't need them, but it can have some of it. But it most definitely does not need and does not want foods. So, well, they're not foods, prefabricated stuff that you buy in supermarkets, which are all made with 3 ingredients: sugar, fat, salt, and wheat. Okay, 4 ingredients. And you know, you go 1,500 items, and they're all made with the same basic stuff and a lot of calories. And I said fat, but it's not fat. It's actually oil. They give you oils, and these oils, which came into, they were invented 150 years ago, if that, which began with cottonseed oil. This is pure poison. We are given garbage, and you know what they say: garbage in, garbage out. So if you want to be a healthy human being, you need to wake up, because ask yourself, where did you get the idea that being vegan was a good idea, or being a vegetarian was a good idea? It didn't come from you, I can tell you that much. It did not originate inside you. This was given to you by other people. And it was an emotional thing, either because you wanted to develop spiritually, or because these animals would be hurt and you don't want to damage other animals. Poor little animals, right? Well, I agree with you. We don't want to damage animals unnecessarily. But if my health depends on killing an animal and eating it, then that is what I will do. Because otherwise, what's the point of my being here? I am here to experience life to the full, and that means I need to eat meat, because red meat is the closest thing that human beings have to a complete food source. Sorry, I'll get off my pedestal. Apologies. I can't hear you.
I said it sounded amazing. I'm like ready to get a steak. like
you also think about the indigenous back in years ago, 80, 90 years ago, the indigenous, what they eat, they connected with the animals. They did a prayer before they went out to hunt. They connected with that soul of that animal, and they always came back with an animal, and they used the entirety of that animal.
Listen, I grow my own cows. I don't grow them per se, but I feed them, look after them. They have their field. I keep them happy. But after 3 years, they're for the job. My wife, who loves animals, she works with animals to help them heal from the effects of human beings. So when she was studying, she couldn't deal with the conflict. He wants to eat his own meat. He wants to kill his own animals. What do I do? She liked a bit of meat, but she couldn't cope with the idea of killing our own animals. And the teacher, kudos to him, who himself is a vegetarian, I believe, she went to him with her problem, and he said, you need to honor him. If he is willing to kill the meat that he eats, then be grateful he's not a hypocrite. Because we all need to eat meat. A lot of people eat meat, but they don't want to know anything about the process of killing the animal. We are creatures of this earth. And on this earth, everything needs to feed on something else to survive.
True. I mean, people say that, but animals eat other animals. Like people, they kind of have a problem, but if the cycle wasn't supposed to be this way, then animals would not eat other animals.
Yeah.
If the process wasn't meant to be this way, the world wouldn't exist. Because if you look at the animal populations, they are dependent on predators to maintain a balance, so there's never too little food or too much food. It's a complete process. It's a cycle. So if you've got a whole lot of cows or any other animals in the wild, and there's always predators that need to keep the herd within a certain proportion. Yeah, it's how it is. If you have too many locusts, they go and start eating everything. 2 years later, they're dead because they've eaten everything. If you have too many of any insects in the world, soon enough, predators begin to grow to feed on them. It's nature is a question of balance. And if we did not eat cows, well, let's face it, there wouldn't be many cows left in the world. We've destroyed pretty much every other animal. We are required to eat certain things, and it is foolish to deny out. You have a baby, do the test, a little bit of meat and a little bit of lettuce, see which one they go for.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of that. So before we finish on this, I would like, because this can go on for a long time, that if you say, okay, Sal, I hear you, I'm going to go for it. I've been a vegetarian, but maybe you're right. I'll go for the meat. Do not do so just like that. You need to work out. When you eat when you are on a vegetarian diet and have been on a vegetarian diet for a long time, you have been poisoning yourself with oxalic acid, with oxalates, and with other things. And this has been accumulating in your body, with some people worse than others. But like what they say, the chickens always come home to roost. And to avoid any problems, like potential kidney problems, you need to go intelligently about this. And if you go on my website, there's a section to do with oxalates, and I explain there the process so that you can make sense of how many milligrams of oxalates you've been eating a day, because the body can only cope with about 150. And if you've been eating almonds, spinach, peanuts, there's a whole list out there. All these things are pure poison to the body, and they accumulate. And so you need to learn about this. You don't just say, oh, I'm going to jump off the deep end of the pool. No, learn to swim.
Nuts will sit in your stomach, and they sit in there and they dehydrate you, right? They sit on your colon. A lot of people I see that don't eat meat, they got like dark rings around their eyes, and their temper, I can see people like vibrating, like I can see them shaking.
That's coffee. That's coffee.
It's not,
people vibrating.
It's not the coffee. Is they look like they starving, because I can see like sometimes I see the rings around their eyes, and then they become ill-tempered. It seems like I've met a lot of people that they don't eat meat, but they have like the temper, and it's like, right here, right now. Everything is
okay. I just finished with this bit for now.
Okay.
When you're a vegetarian, you have no vitamin B12 in your diet, unless you take, and if you lack vitamin B12, your liver suffers. And when the liver is problematic, we're always bad-tempered, okay? So a liver that's not working properly always gives rise to rage. So too much alcohol, too many druggies, whether it's Western medicine or psychotropics or any of the other recreational ones, too many of the rubbish foods that there are everywhere, all of that affects the liver. And if you lack the ingredients for the liver, vitamin B12 is one, then you're so deficient that eventually you get nerve problems. You'll get numbness and tingling, painful nerves. It's a whole lot of things that happen. And often people who are vegetarian, they tend to have too much sugar, and they will start to put weight on. They start to put their weight on, and they start to get a bit of a belly, lower abdominal belly. And that means that they're developing, what's the word? Fatty liver disease. People think fatty liver disease just comes from drinking alcohol. No, it comes because we're eating too much carbohydrate, which is turning into fructose, and it accumulates as fat in our system. Anyway, I'm more than happy to come back with yourselves and talk about diet another time. There's so much we could talk about. Okay, if your people who listen to you would like to hear.
You think they're just gonna be like, Sal, shut up, Sal. What are you trying to hear? No, I think it was absolutely fabulous, because then you could talk about that, and you can talk about alcohol as well. So, I don't know, whatever you want to talk about. I just like listening to you talk. I've got
a lot of things I can talk about. We could do quite a few podcasts if you're interested on a variety of subjects. I mean, I'm not going to do that. Look, I got to go, but I would love to speak about the whales.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I would love to have a session to do with the whales, because there is so much adjacent to that. Anyway.
So we're just going to have a whole
on that note, yes.
We're going to have a section for Sal on a playlist just for Sal. You can just listen to Sal, and all his links will be in the description. And I thank you so much. I had a great time. I almost cried like 3 times in here. It was just like, it was so good.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much for letting me speak with you. And until next time, we'll speak again.
Thank you.
All right.
Get in touch, Bailey.
Yes, we will be in touch.
Okay, Bailey.
Well, we'll speak as well, Erica. Right.
Yeah.
And use me. Sorry. I'm getting confused here. Till next time, I gotta go. All right. Bye for now.
Much love, everybody.
Bye.
So that was a lot. And this is the end of our session, but comments? I had such a good time. My cheeks were busted.
Right. And I had, and deep down, I've been always having that feeling, and then like to have a balance, because I always would go back to the indigenous and how they just connected with the animal, the spirit of that. And yeah, there's that cycle of the natural ecosystem of the earth that like he was implying, the population would go up if there was no carnivores to balance that out, or everything would shift. It just happens that there's so many a few hands to project and move things in people's directions and pop up all these restaurants everywhere, right?
Well, I mean, my thing too is, when you have the knowledge of how the digestive system works, where someone's clearly telling you this is how the digestive system works, it's kind of hard to argue against that. There was definitely some deep down information that I didn't really know. I mean, and it also makes sense too, when you're talking about processing vegetables, that of course, yeah, a cow can digest all that grass and cellulose, because doesn't it have 3 stomachs?
Mm-hmm.
4 stomachs. So it's going through chamber to chamber to chamber to process that. So yeah, that's going to be, because before the argument was that you can process vegetables to get all the vitamins and minerals you need, because a cow can go from being, a little 200 pounds to 1,000 pounds. But what brings their weight up generally, okay, they got the 4 stomachs to process, but it's the milk that they get from the mom that fattens them up. But we also know that same milk that comes from the cow, I guess it has I forget what that mineral is that is like glue that fattens them up. So we're not getting that from celery. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense too when you think about the process that the stomach produces acid. versus the animal stomach that ferments. That if you have celery, which is going to be acidic, and lemons that are acidic, and all these things, like when you put that in there, you're putting acid on top of acid, versus meat that can be broken down with the acid. It just makes a lot of stuff make sense to me now.
Mm-hmm.
Why you would be constantly in a state of sensitivity and reflux.
And I think it comes back to having that balance, like he was saying. Your body can process and you know,
Tolerate
vegetable,
Mhm.
but and those certain fruits and vegetables are alkaline, right? But when you have too much of that then it turns into that, right? Then it becomes acidic, right?
You know what?
I gotta watch some videos and think about life.
There's the whole thing too about the different, like which vegetables have a lot of lectins. Like the seeds have lectins, which is that protective coating. So there's a lot that we need to investigate. When we're looking at our overall diet, we have to just stop and look at, oh, these things have lectins in it. These have oxalates in them. These are slow poisons to our system. And yes, like you said, we can tolerate them. But if you have a diet that's just completely based on these things, then, our body can tolerate. And then all of a sudden we need that maintenance. So, he was talking about the emotional maintenance, but our bodies need that physical maintenance as well. And so everything we need to really investigate. And so, a couple of generations ago, we had a different way of eating. I can say I grew up eating differently, 50 years ago than I do now, because our society was different. Availability was different. I grew up, I didn't even know what broccoli was, because it wasn't even part of our vocabulary. It wasn't until years later that we saw broccoli. I'm not saying anything bad about broccoli, but I'm just saying we ate, and that also became important. Like, where do you live? Where you live, you have foods that grow within your vicinity. And so there's something to be said about eating within 50 miles of where you live, right? We live in certain areas, so we need certain kinds of foods. I live up in the northern climate, eating, tropical fruits where I enjoy them. They're not normal for here, right? So we have to really think about and be mindful of how we are eating.
I had someone post about chicken being a hybrid animal. I guess and I said, if you're gonna not eat food because it's hybridized, then okay, number one, we are hybrids. That's number one. Number two, the fruits and vegetables that he was talking about, I was like, do you think that's a real banana? That's not really what a banana would have looked like 100 years ago. So it's this whole idea of just getting a hold of some new information and getting a little bit excited, but not really understanding everything is hybrid. The trees that we have are, the plants we have, we are, the animals are, that this little experiment, everything is a little bit mixed up, and it's not as simple as I'm not going to eat this because it's hybrid, or, and I think too, here it comes with tradition, right? The tradition of eating meat or the tradition of not eating meat. If we don't know where the tradition comes from or the reason for it, then now we're disconnected and we're doing things and we don't know why. So once we've disconnected from growing our own food and growing our own animals and how they're managed and how they're slaughtered and how they're served, because now, the meat that you would get in the stores usually like 18 months old by the time you get it, right? A year, 6 months, a year, something like that. But we just don't have knowledge of the process, so we don't have respect for it. And as you're saying, Jonathan, if you're connecting to what the natives or indigenous people did, there was this process of loving and respecting the animal, praying for your food or giving the blessing, acknowledgement, thanking the actual animal for allowing itself to be sacrificed for you. That's kind of, I think that's a part of the process with the halal meat as well, is that there's just a way to do it. And yeah, it's not cool when you watch, if you watch Temple Grandin or any, she talked about husbandry of how to treat the animals humanely and not picking them up by their hind legs and dragging them with a claw type machine and startling them and making, all the distress that comes with it, or, having a hole on the side where you're sticking grain in it and having it walking through its own feces and all the things that are happening to the meat, that it's really not eating meat that is the problem. It's how the meat is processed and treated and raised that's the problem. Like, you don't want your chicken growing on a shelf in a big barn where it never gets to see the grass and ground and touch the ground. It's this way that they've become to manufacture food underground or in these big warehouses where the animal never gets to touch the earth,
In constant dis-ease.
Right.
So that frequency and that vibration of what they're experiencing is held within their body and then their flesh and their DNA.
It's constant trauma for the animal.
So
when you're eating toxic, poisoned.
Yeah. So that's what we're digesting as well.
Right. And that's where this problem is. And this purulent smell of the meat. I noticed about 1997, 1998, it was hard for me to cook meat because I could smell the purulence inside of it when I was cooking ribs. I remember one time I was putting it in the pot and I had to run into another room, and I would cook until the seasonings kicked in and then I could tolerate the smell. But for the longest time, I could smell it.
Your body will let you know. I mean,
it was loud. It was letting me know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we just think it's, it just doesn't smell good. But
some people can't smell it at all. You'd be surprised. Some people can't smell it.
I can't handle the ribs and the smell, because I used to work in a couple kitchens.
You smelled it. Okay. People do not smell anything wrong. They just.
No.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I was turned off from pork quite a while now, and then I saw a few other videos about, when they pour Coca-Cola or Pepsi on top of a pork chop, let's say, or
and the worms came out or something.
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I mean, unless things are well done, cooked and smoked and cured with that salt, which, again,
I would love to ask him about that.
Then again, there's salt, and then you have to find your balance with how much salt and sodium you're consuming, right?
Yeah.
But yes, there's so many questions that we have for him. I mean, he could talk forever, and I mean, join the wave.
On the way.
Yeah.
So, unless you have something to say, Terry. Okay, because I'm gonna end it here, and boy, I can't wait to see what happens with.
I think I'm gonna go have a bison steak.
Oh, I know. And at least if you do want a solution, halal meat is a solution. So for Muslims and some other cultures, I know there's some restaurants around here, they only use halal meat at the restaurants and stuff like that. So there's a reason why, Jewish people have the kosher symbol, and I would really start to look at why some other people eat certain kinds of meat and check out what they're eating. Not telling anybody what to do, but definitely check it out, and don't be so quick to throw this information out, because now this makes me want to go look up everything he said about the stomach. I'm really ready to take notes on that. So have a good day. This is going to be what? The 4th segment of the Sal playlist.
Yeah,
And I had a great time, every bit of it.
it was fabulous. Yeah.
Fabulous.